This is the digital channel of the General Overseas Service of All India Radio. I am Manoj Mainkar, and in the next half hour, I'll bring to you news updates from India and around the world, awareness videos on coronavirus by Government of India, yoga on radio, and a lot more. We'll begin with the news updates.
This is the General Overseas Service of All India Radio. Namaskar. The news snippets. 295,881 patients have recovered from COVID-19 in India. In the last 24 hours, 10,244 people have recovered from the virus. The recovery rate is now 58.1%. 220,497 COVID-19 tests were conducted in the past 24 hours. In a welcome development, the first 1,000 vials of antiviral drug Covifort have been delivered to Maharashtra, Gujarat, Delhi and Tamil Nadu. India has made it clear to China that trying to change the status quo by resorting to force or coercion is not the right way forward. Indian ambassador to China Vikram Misri in an interview said that Chinese PLA forces have damaged the considerable trust in the bilateral relationship. India reiterated that it is very aware and very clear about the alignment of the LAC in Galwan Valley. Indian troops have been patrolling these areas for a long period of time without any problems. Indian Army Chief General M.M. Naravane met Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. The Army Chief, who was on a tour of forward areas in Ladakh, briefed the Defence Minister on the ground situation. 3 Hizbul Mujahideen terrorists were killed in an encounter in Tral, Jammu and Kashmir. Authorities say that the Hizbul Mujahideen has been deactivated. In another incident, a CRPF Jawan and a 5-year-old boy were killed in a militant attack in Anantnag. Reports from Nepal say that the CPN government of KP Sharma Oli is facing internal bickerings over certain decisions taken by Mr. Oli. UN says aid to Yemen must be speedy and massive in order to mitigate the humanitarian crisis in the country. It warned that millions of children are on the brink of starvation in Yemen. 6 people, including a policeman, were stabbed by a man in a Glasgow hotel. Police are examining the terrorist angle. And that is the end of the news snippets. Yesterday, the 26th of June, was the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Drug Trafficking. Let us now hear what the health advisors and experts have to say.
Good evening. I am Dr. Anant Agarwal. I am a consultant psychiatrist and drug de-addiction specialist at Perspective Psychiatric Center in New Delhi. Today we will talk about drug use and drug addiction. Drug use and addiction is referred to as substance dependence in medical terminology. These drugs can include any substances ranging from alcohol, smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, all the way to using marijuana, heroin, morphine, and recreational drugs. With time, the level of stress is increasing in the society and people are resorting to substance use in order to cope with it. And young generation is using these substances for recreational purposes. Contrary to the society's view of it being a social and moral problem, medical science views drug addiction as a psychiatric illness which needs treatment. We can recognize drug addiction in persons who are unable to control their amount of drug use and generally use it on a daily basis. Socio-occupational dysfunction and problems in physical health occurring due to the substance start taking a backseat in such persons, and the entire focus shifts to procuring the substance. If you recognize these signs in yourself or any family member or friend, my advice to you is to consult a psychiatrist for further treatment. The treatment for drug de-addiction includes initial phase of detoxification in either outpatient or inpatient setting, followed by counseling which occurs over a long term for prevention of relapse. So my advice to all of you is to refrain from isolating these such persons and also not to label them as addicts and instead motivating them for seeking treatment. Thank you.
I am Principal Bhupinder. I'm founder principal of Government College of Commerce and Business Administration, Chandigarh. After that, I was teaching MBA classes, the subject of business communication and business ethics. After that, I resigned my job and started free teaching in schools. I would be talking about drug addiction, which is a serious problem all over the world. You see, most of youth are understandingly sensible, they are concerned about their careers, and they are also working in unison with what you can say positive things of life. They want to do well in life, and I congratulate them. But some portion of youth, some persons, some numbers, they have taken to drug addiction. Number one reason for this is these drugs are being, available one way or another, which is very unfortunate. But what is more important, that youth should go away from drug addiction. For that, what is the cause of this drug addiction? That can be said that youth at times get frustrated. They feel depressed at times, or sometimes they are just feeling bored of life. At this juncture, if drugs are there, they get addicted to it, which is very unfortunate. Second is that they feel that there is some kind of kick or majority or heroism in taking drugs. That is a misconception, but somehow or another some youth may be directed towards this direction, which is unfortunate. Now, why youth take to drugs? I have given depression, just out of kicks, and company of others. A person is known by the company he keeps. Now, what is the responsibility? Responsibility of the parents, teachers, social activists, media men, all concerned. Their responsibility is that they should wean away youth from drug addiction. A joint effort is there. A full-fledged campaign at all levels in all areas is required so that drug addiction problem is tackled, even problem of other intoxicants is tackled. For this we need sympathy. We need not scold those who are drug addicts. We should be more humane. We should try to discuss matter with them, and that is only possible when we have real genuine feeling for them. We want our country to improve, and above all, we have case studies of those who have left drug addiction. That should be propagated by media, via books. There can be a special counseling session in school, colleges, and even at non-formal education areas, with non-formal education given. Drug addiction problem should be tackled at all levels. It should be tackled very sympathetically, and for that we need help of number one parent, number two elders, brothers, sisters of the people of youth, and then of course the society and the government. Then this problem of drug addiction can be solved. I really pray and I appeal to youth that they should keep away from drug. They should go to sports, they should go to plays, they should go to honing up their talent in artwork, in singing, or in making mimicry, or even technology aided. So that is my advice to youth. I hope all of them are able to get away from drug addiction. Those who are drug addicted, others shouldn't join it.
I think it's very important that we talk about addictions more importantly, rather than only talking about what do we do once addictions have happened in terms of de-addiction. I think it's important that right from school and college, we look at social skills, assertiveness, create awareness on substance abuse, create awareness on how to deal with peer pressures, create awareness about the harmful impact of substances. So that right at the initial stages, when a young person is either going to experiment or feel the pressure of peers or has been misinformed about any substance, that's when he or she are able to stop themselves. Because the key component of prevention of substance abuse lies in the prevention of it, which means we create a social milieu, we empower children with life skills, we empower young people with life skills, that they do not end up using substances. And if they feel pressure, they have somebody to talk to. If we find some young person who started using substance, we need to initiate counseling right at the start. Ensure that the pressures acting are countered by us, whether it is in terms of school counseling, college counseling. The role of parents is important, role of peers is very important, celebrities, role models, sports stars, media, all of us who are stakeholders need to keep talking about creating an awareness about substances so that we don't have young people into substance use. And for those who become regular users and are going through an addiction, identify it. When you miss a substance, if you feel withdrawal or you keep needing to increase the substances because you are becoming tolerant to the dosage that you were taking, if it starts affecting your physical health, emotional health, your sleep, your appetite, your work, your relationships, these are red flags that the substance is overpowering you. You seek help. Help would be in terms of medicines. Help would be in terms of counseling, family therapy, helping you rehabilitate yourself and get back to life. But the key component, like I said, is in prevention of substance abuse. Let's keep talking about mental health. Let's keep talking about awareness. Let's build a society which is able to ensure that substance use is not a part of it.
Yesterday, the 26th of June, was the International Day against drug abuse and illicit drug trafficking. You are listening to what the health advisors and experts are telling us. The story of my experiment with truth is an immortal book and a legacy for ages to come. This book is the autobiography of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. It is one of the best sellers and is translated in nearly all languages of the world. It is a detailed account of Gandhi, consisting of Gandhi's self-penned essays on his experiments and covers all aspects of the Mahatma's spiritual life till 1920. One of those books that need to be read periodically to remind oneself that someone out there, sometime, thought that transformation, liberation, and plain living without violence is possible. These thoughts seem so old-fashioned, don't they? In this world, some biographies inspire, but the good ones challenge. What would it be like for you and I to fight the biggest battle, the one Gandhi fought, the one that takes place inside of you, within you? Here we have for you the words of the Mahatma in the voice of his youngest grandson, Gopal Krishna Gandhi.
The next day at 1 o'clock, I went to Mr. Baker's prayer meeting. I was introduced to others. Mr. Coates was a Quaker. We went out for walks together, and he also took me to other Christian friends. As we came closer to each other, he began to give me books of his own choice until my shelf was filled with them. He loaded me with books, as it were. I read a number of such books in 1893. I liked some things in them, while I did not like others. Mr. Coates was not the man easily to accept defeat. He had great affection for me. He saw round my neck the Vaishnava necklace of Tulsi beads. He thought it to be superstition and was pained by it. This superstition does not become you. Come, let me break the necklace. No, you will not. It is a sacred gift from my mother. But do you believe in it? I do not know its mysterious significance. I do not think I should come to harm if I did not wear it. But I cannot, without sufficient reason, give up a necklace that she put round my neck out of love and in the conviction that it would be conducive to my welfare. When with the passage of time it wears away and breaks of its own accord, I shall have no desire to get a new one. But this necklace cannot be broken. Sheikh Tayyib Haji Khan Muhammad had in Pretoria the same position as was enjoyed by Dada Abdullah in Natal. There was no public movement that could be conducted without him. I made his acquaintance the very first week and told him of my intention to get in touch with every Indian in Pretoria. My first step was to call a meeting of all the Indians in Pretoria and to present to them a picture of their condition in the Transvaal. The meeting was held at the house of Sheikh Haji Muhammad Haji Jusub, to whom I had a letter of introduction. It was principally attended by Memon merchants, though there was a sprinkling of Hindus as well. My speech at this meeting may be said to have been the first public speech in my life. I went fairly prepared with my subject, which was about observing truthfulness in business. I had always heard the merchants say that truth was not possible in business. I did not think so then, nor do I now. I strongly contested the position in my speech and awakened the merchants to a sense of their duty, which was twofold. The responsibility to be truthful was all the greater in a foreign land, because the conduct of a few Indians was the measure of that of the millions of their fellow countrymen. I had found our people's habits to be insanitary as compared with those of the Englishmen around them, and drew their attention to it. I laid stress on the necessity of forgetting all distinctions such as Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, Christians, Gujaratis, Madrasis, Punjabis, Sindhis, Kachis, Suratis, and so on. I suggested, in conclusion, the forming of an association to make representations to the authorities concerned in respect of the hardships of the Indian settlers, and offered to place at its disposal as much of my time and service as was possible. I saw that I made a considerable impression on the meeting. In short, my stay in Pretoria enabled me to make a deep study of the social, economic and political conditions of the Indians in the Transvaal and the Orange Free State. I had no idea that this study was to be of invaluable service to me in the future, for I had thought of returning home by the end of the year or even earlier, if the case finished before the year was out. But God disposed otherwise. A very stringent enactment was passed in the Transvaal in 1885. It was slightly amended in 1886, and it was provided under the amended law that all Indians should pay a poll tax of £3 as fee for entry into the Transvaal. They might not own land except in locations set apart for them, and in practice even that was not to be ownership. They had no franchise. Under these latter, Indians might not walk on public footpaths and might not move out of doors after 9 p.m. without a permit. The consequences of the regulation regarding the use of footpaths were rather serious for me. I always went out for a walk through President Street to an open plain. President Kruger's house was in this street, a very modest, unostentatious building without a garden and not distinguishable from other houses in its neighborhood. I nearly always went along the footpath past this patrol without the slightest hitch or hindrance. Now the man on duty used to be changed from time to time. Once, one of these men, without giving me the slightest warning, without even asking me to leave the footpath, pushed and kicked me into the street. I was dismayed. Before I could question him as to his behavior, Mr. Coates, who happened to be passing the spot on horseback, hailed me and said, "Gandhi, I have seen everything. I shall gladly be your witness in court if you proceed against the man. I am very sorry you have been so rudely assaulted." "You need not be sorry," I said. "What does the poor man know?" The incident deepened my feeling for the Indian settlers. I discussed with them the advisability of making a test case if it were found necessary to do so, after having seen the British agent in the matter of these regulations. I thus made an intimate study of the hard condition of the Indian settlers, not only by reading and hearing about it, but by personal experience. I saw that South Africa was no country for a self-respecting Indian, and my mind became more and more preoccupied with the question as to how this state of thing might be improved. But my principal duty for the moment was to attend to the case of Dada Abdullah. The year's stay in Pretoria was a most valuable experience in my life. Here it was that I had opportunities of learning public work and acquired some measure of my capacity for it. It was likewise here that I learnt the secret of success as a lawyer. Dada Abdullah's was no small case. I took the keenest interest in the case. I indeed threw myself into it. I read all the papers pertaining to the transactions. My client was a man of great ability and reposed absolute confidence in me, and this rendered my work easy. When I was making preparation for Dada Abdullah's case, I had not fully realized this paramount importance of facts. Facts mean truth, and once we adhere to truth, the law comes to our aid naturally. I saw that the facts of Dada Abdullah's case made it very strong indeed, and that the law was bound to be on his side. But I also saw that the litigation, if it were persisted in, would ruin the plaintiff and the defendant, who were relatives and both belonged to the same city. I approached Tayyab Seth and requested and advised him to go to arbitration. I felt that my duty was to defend both parties and bring them together. I strained every nerve to bring about a compromise. At last, Tayyab Seth agreed. An arbitrator was appointed. The case was argued before him, and Dada Abdullah won. But that did not satisfy me. It was impossible for Tayyab Seth to pay down the whole sum of £37,000 and costs. There was only one way. Dada Abdullah should allow him to pay in moderate installments. He was equal to the occasion and granted Tayyab Seth installments spread over a very long period. Both were happy over the result, and both rose in the public estimation. My joy was boundless. I had learnt the true practice of law.
You just heard the words of the Mahatma in the voice of his youngest grandson, Gopal Krishna Gandhi. This program came to you from the General Overseas Service of All India Radio. You are with us on the General Overseas Service of All India Radio.
You are with us on the General Overseas Service of All India Radio. We now bring you today's commentary. Firm India counters Chinese provocations on LAC. It is scripted by Dr. M.S. Pratibha, Strategic Analyst on Chinese Affairs, and read by Kaushik Rai. China has been strengthening its military infrastructure along the India-China border in the last couple of decades. On the other hand, India started its infrastructure upgrades on the Indian side of the border much later, especially gathering speed only after 2014. The Indian side has finished constructing over 1,000 kilometers of road so far as part of its border project. The India-China border project has 3 phases and India is about to complete the first one. The Indian infrastructure catch-up has made China apprehensive. As India goes on developing its border infrastructure, its patrolling capabilities along the LOC have improved considerably, much to the chagrin of China. Consequently, the border situation has become tense, with the first standoff occurring on 5th May 2020 when scuffles broke out between Indian and Chinese troops in Pangong So in Ladakh and Nakula in North Sikkim. Both sides suffered injuries. However, the Chinese started reinforcing troops closer to the LAC and its aggressive posturing was visible in places including Galwan Valley, Demchok and Daulat Beg Oldi. Indian troops were mobilized to counter Beijing's actions. In Galwan Valley, the Chinese also objected to the Indian road construction. The recent standoff and the subsequent brawl occurred because of building of Chinese observation posts to monitor Indian activities. The Corps commander level talks between General Harinder Singh, the commander of Indian 14th Corps of Leh, and China's Major General Liu Lin, commander of the South Xinjiang military region, on 6 June 2020 resulted in a decisive action to disengage. However, in the process of verifying the promised disengagement, the Indian side found that China did not implement the agreement reached between the two countries. In the aftermath, a scuffle broke out between the soldiers of the two countries. While India suffered 20 casualties in the Galwan Valley, the Chinese side reportedly suffered over 45 casualties. The PLA's aggressive stance has failed to deter India's resolve to complete its border roads construction. The ongoing roads project will give the Indian military better connectivity to its forward area called the Subsector North, and road links such as the Sasoma to Saserla would provide the Indian military alternative routes to the Daulat Beg Oldi. India has already finished its Darbuk-Shiok DBO road in 2019, and despite the Chinese provocation, India completed a strategic bridge over the Galwan River just after the scuffle of June 15th. This bridge would improve India's military access to the LAC and will increase the ability to transport military and combat vehicles. The current situation remains tense as both sides have reinforced their deployments. From the Chinese side, there appears to be surge of vehicles to sustain supplies for positions that were recently erected in May and June. India, on the other hand, while moving its troops closer to the border, is also expediting the construction of 32 roads along LAC. The present India-China face-off is expected to continue till China abides by the recent verifiable disengagement agreement signed on the 24th of June 2020. That was today's commentary entitled Firm India Counters Chinese Provocations on LAC. It was scripted by Dr. M.S. Pratibha, Strategic Analyst on Chinese Affairs, and read by Kaushik Rai.
This commentary came to you from the General Overseas Service of All India Radio.
This broadcast came to you from the digital channel of the General Overseas Service of All India Radio.